The Vermilion Casque. The year was 1912. The location was the deep emerald heart of the Pegu-Yoma, Bago-Yoma, a spine of low mountains dividing the Irrawaddy and Sitaung River valleys in British Burma. Here, the teak trees were not merely plants. They were pillars of a cathedral that had stood before the first kings of Bagan rose from the dust. The air was heavy, a tangible substance composed of decaying leaf litter, orchid nectar, and the humid breath of the monsoon season which had just begun to retreat. High above the forest floor, where the sunlight shattered against the canopy into 1,000 shards of gold, a shadow passed. It was not the fleeting shadow of a hawk, nor the silent glide of an owl. It was heavy, rhythmic, and accompanied by a sound that resembled the chugging of a steam locomotive. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It was the Nagaung, the great hornbill Buceros bicornis. To the British naturalists cataloging the empire's flora and fauna, he was a specimen of the Bucarodidae family, remarkable for his size and the peculiar casque sitting atop his massive bill. To the local Karen and Burman trackers, and specifically to the old hunter Lang, the bird was a symbol of fidelity so absolute it bordered on the tragic. Lang sat perfectly still at the base of a towering dipterocarp tree. He was a man of 60 winters, his skin the texture of cured tobacco, his eyes clouded with the onset of cataracts but still sharp enough to track movement in the twilight. He held no rifle today. Instead, he held a notebook, a gift from the young Englishman who had set up camp 3 miles downriver. "Do not shoot him, uncle," the Englishman Mr. Arthur Sterling had pleaded. "Watch him. I need to know the hour he seals the nest." Lang adjusted his longi and looked up. The male hornbill had landed on a thick branch roughly 80 feet above the ground. He was magnificent. He measured nearly 4 feet from the tip of his beak to the end of his tail. His plumage was a stark contrast of midnight black and snow white, specifically on the neck, wing coverts, and tail. But it was the head that commanded reverence. The bird's beak was a formidable curve of yellow keratin, surmounted by the casque, a hollow U-shaped structure that looked like a second beak riding atop the first. The male had been preening, rubbing the casque against the preen gland beneath his tail, staining the yellow helmet with a vibrant, oily red-orange hue. In the filtering sunlight, he looked like a warrior wearing a helmet of vermilion and gold. "You are late today, Koji," Lang whispered into the humidity. The bird hopped awkwardly along the branch, his massive zygodactyl feet gripping the bark. He approached a natural cavity in the trunk of the tree. This was the sanctuary. Inside, shrouded in darkness, was the female. The biological reality of the Nadaum is one of the most fascinating narratives in the natural world. It was a story of voluntary imprisonment. The female hornbill, having mated, had retreated into this hollow. Over the past week, she and her mate had worked in unison to build a wall. Using mud, fruit pulp, and her own droppings, she had sealed the entrance of the hole from the inside, while the male plastered it from the outside. Now only a narrow vertical slit remained, no wider than a finger. It was a prison door, locked until the chicks were fledged. Through this slit, she would receive all her sustenance. She was entirely dependent on the male. If he died, if a hunter's bullet found him, or a leopard ambushed him, she and her offspring would starve to death in their self-made tomb. The male regurgitated a fig. He leaned forward, tapping his bill against the wood. A soft, resonant knock. Tock, tock. The tip of a beak appeared at the slit. The male passed the fruit with a delicacy that belied his size. Then came a lizard, limp and lifeless. Then a large beetle. Lang marked the notebook with a piece of charcoal. Time, mid-afternoon. Delivery, fruit and meat. "He is a better husband than most men in the village," a voice said softly from behind the bushes. Lang did not startle. He knew the tread of the forest floor. It was Saw Tun, a Karen tracker who worked for the Bombay-Burma Trading Corporation, the timber giant stripping the teak from these hills. "The Englishman pays you to watch a bird eat?" Saw Tun asked, squatting beside the old man, chewing on a piece of betel nut. "He pays me to understand the bird," Lang corrected. "He says this bird is the soul of the forest. If the Nagaum leaves, the forest is dying." Saw Tun spat a stream of red juice onto a fern. "The forest is dying anyway, uncle. The company wants this tree. They marked it yesterday. Look." Lang felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He looked at the base of the giant dipterocarp. There, on the side opposite where he sat, was a blaze cut into the bark, stamped with the hammer mark of the corporation. Girdling. They would wring the bark to kill the tree, let it dry standing for 3 years, and then fell it. "They cannot take this tree," Lang said, his voice trembling. "The female is inside. She has walled herself in. If they girdle the tree, the vibration alone might panic her. If they cut the surrounding canopy, the microclimate changes. She will abandon the nest or die of heat." "Tell that to the station manager," Sawtun said, shrugging. "Teak is money. Hardwood is money. Birds are just birds, meat for the pot." "This is not just a bird," Lang snapped, looking back up at the majestic creature feeding his mate. "The Chin people believe the Nagaung is the father of their race. The Karen believe he is the keeper of promises. Even the Burmans know that killing a Nagaung brings bad karma upon the hunter's house for 7 generations. "I am not killing it," Sawtun said defensively. "I am just telling you. The axes are coming in 3 days." The male hornbill launched himself from the branch. The air shuddered under the beat of his wings. Whoosh, 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 as he flew off toward a cluster of fig trees a mile away. The silence rushed back in, filling the void he left behind. Lang closed the notebook. The scientific observation was over. The battle for the sanctuary had begun. Arthur Sterling wiped the sweat from his spectacles with a linen handkerchief that had long since lost its whiteness. The heat in the Pegu Yoma was oppressive, a wet blanket that made the simple act of breathing feel like labor. His tent was set up on a rise overlooking the creek. It was a chaotic blend of Victorian civilization and jungle survival. A folding canvas table held a microscope, several jars of formaldehyde, a pristine copy of the Fauna of British India, and a half-drunk cup of tea. "Mr. Sterling," Lang's voice came from the tent flap. Arthur looked up smiling. He was a young man, barely 30, with the pale complexion of a scholar who spent too much time in libraries and not enough in the sun, though the Burmese sun was rapidly correcting that. "Ah, Lang, come in, come in. Did you see him, Buceros by Cornice? Did he feed her?" Lang entered, removing his sandals. He placed the notebook on the table. "He fed her. Figs, a lizard. He is strong." "Excellent," Arthur said, reaching for the notebook. He flipped through the charcoal marks. "This data is invaluable. The nesting duration in this latitude is still a matter of debate in the Royal Society. Some say 3 months, some say 4. "Mr. Sterling," Lang interrupted, his tone grave. "We have a problem. The tree, the corporation has marked it." Arthur froze. He lowered the notebook. "Marked it for felling?" "For girdling. They will till the tree to dry the wood. The axes come in 3 days." Arthur stood up, knocking his chair back. "That is preposterous. That tree is a nesting site. It is biologically critical. Furthermore, it is not even teak. It is a dipterocarp. Why would they want it?" "They take the hardwoods too now," Lang explained. "Or perhaps it is in the way of the drag path for the elephants to haul the logs. It does not matter why. It matters that they will do it." Arthur paced the small confines of the tent. He was a man of science, not politics. He was here on a grant, a guest of the colonial administration, but he held no authority over the timber companies. The Bombay Burma Trading Corporation was a state within a state. They owned the rights to the forests. They owned the elephants. In many ways, they owned the law in the jungle. "Who is the manager in charge of this sector?" Arthur asked. "Mr. Ferguson," Lang replied. "He is at the main camp, 10 miles upriver." "Ferguson," Arthur muttered. He had met Ferguson once, a red-faced Scotsman who viewed the forest solely in terms of tonnage and board feet, a man who likely couldn't distinguish a great hornbill from a common crow. "Prepare the boat, Lang," Arthur said, grabbing his pith helmet. "We are going upriver." "It will be dark soon, Thakin," Lang warned. "The river is dangerous at night." "The female has sealed the wall," Arthur said, his eyes intense behind the wire-rimmed glasses. "She has molted her flight feathers by now. She is flightless. She is helpless. If they touch that tree, it is murder. We go now." The journey upriver was a descent into a primordial world. The dugout canoe sliced through the black water, propelled by Lang's expert paddling at the stern, and Arthur's clumsy but enthusiastic rowing at the bow. The sounds of the night jungle were a cacophony. The sawing rasp of cicadas was deafening. Occasionally, the splash of a crocodile sliding off a mudbank would break the rhythm. As they paddled, Arthur's mind drifted to the bird, the Nagaun. He had first read about them in the dusty archives of the British Museum. The descriptions had seemed fantastical. A bird that mates for life, living for 30, 40, perhaps 50 years. But seeing them in the wild had changed him. There was an intelligence in their eyes, the way the male cocked his heavy head to listen to the faint scratching of the chicks inside the tree, the way they communicated with deep, guttural roars that echoed across the valleys. They were the farmers of the forest. They ate fruits that other birds couldn't swallow, flying miles away to deposit the seeds. The giant trees of these hills existed largely because generations of hornbills had planted them. To kill the hornbill was to kill the future of the forest. "Ooflang," Arthur called out over the noise of the insects. "Why do you care so much? You are a hunter. You have killed many animals." Ooflang paused his stroke for a moment, letting the canoe glide. "I hunt to eat, Thakin. I hunt the deer, the wild pig. They are food, but the ngong, he is not food." "Why?" "My father told me a story," Ooflang said, his voice rhythmic with the paddling. "Long ago, a man and his wife were very poor. They loved each other deeply. A plague came to the village. The wife fell sick. To save her from the spirits that were hunting her, the husband hid her in a hollow tree and covered the entrance, leaving only a hole to feed her. He went to find medicine. The canoe bumped against a submerged log, then corrected course. He searched for days, Ooflang continued. When he returned with the medicine, he was too late. The wife had died of grief, thinking he had abandoned her. The gods, seeing their love, turned them into birds, the ngong. That is why the male works so hard. He is always trying to prove he has not abandoned her. To kill him is to break that promise again. Arthur fell silent. The scientific explanation, evolutionary adaptation to protect eggs from arboreal predators like monkeys and snakes, suddenly felt dry and insufficient. The folklore held a truth that biology could not quantify, the emotional weight of the bond. "We are here," Ooflang announced. Lights flickered on the bank ahead, the main timber camp. The smell of wood smoke and roasting meat drifted over the water. Elephants, massive dark shapes, were shackled near the water's edge, their chains clinking softly. Arthur stepped onto the muddy bank, straightening his tunic. He was about to confront the industrial machine of the British Empire, with nothing but a notebook and a local legend. The camp manager's bungalow was raised on stilts, a structure of teak and bamboo with a wide veranda. Mr. Ferguson sat there, nursing a glass of whiskey, a kerosene lamp illuminating his flushed face. "Sterling," Ferguson bellowed as Arthur walked up the steps. "Good God, man, what are you doing out of the bush at this hour? Run out of beetles to count?" Arthur did not smile. "Mr. Ferguson, I need to speak with you about Sector 4, specifically tree number 402. Ferguson blinked, confused. He motioned for a servant to bring another glass. "Tree 402? You expect me to know every tree by number? We process thousands." "It is a dipterocarp," Arthur said, remaining standing. "A massive specimen. Your men blazed it yesterday for girdling." "And?" Ferguson took a sip. "If it's marked, it comes down. We have a quota, Sterling. Teak for the Navy, hardwoods for the railways. The Empire needs wood." "That tree is occupied," Arthur said firmly. Ferguson laughed, a harsh barking sound. "Occupied? By whom? A gnat spirit? A hermit?" "By a great hornbill female and her clutch. She has walled herself in. If you disturb that tree, she dies." Ferguson sighed, setting his glass down with a heavy clink. The amusement vanished from his face, replaced by the weary irritation of a man who dealt with logistics, labor disputes, and malaria, and had no patience for sentimentality. "Sterling, look around you. This is a forest. Animals live in trees. We cut trees, therefore animals move. It is the way of things." "She cannot move." Arthur slammed his hand on the railing. "She is molted. She is flightless. She is sealed inside a tomb of mud. It is not a matter of her simply flying away. She is trapped." Ferguson stared at him. "You are serious?" "Deadly serious. I am asking, no, I am demanding that you spare that tree, and a buffer zone of at least 100 yards around it." Ferguson lit a cigar, the smoke drifting into the humid night. "And if I say no? I have a schedule. The elephants are moving into Sector 4 on Thursday. Rerouting the drag path costs money. Leaving a giant tree standing in the middle of a clearing creates a hazard for my men." "Then I will report you," Arthur said, bluffing. "I will write to the governor. I will write to the Bombay Natural History Society. I will publish an article stating that the Bombay-Burma Trading Corporation is knowingly destroying rare scientific specimens. Ferguson narrowed his eyes. The threat of bad press, however slight, was annoying. But more than that, he saw the desperation in the young man's eyes. "Is it really that rare?" Ferguson asked. "It is the Bucaros bicornis," Arthur said, his voice lowering. "The Chin people call it the king of birds. To kill it is ungentlemanly, Ferguson. It is slaughtering a mother in her bed." Ferguson puffed on the cigar for a long minute. He looked out at the dark line of the jungle. He was a hard man, but he was not a cruel one. He had a wife back in Glasgow, whom he hadn't seen in 2 years. "1 tree," Ferguson grunted. "And the buffer zone," Arthur pressed. 50 yards, minimum." Ferguson waved his hand dismissively. "Fine, 50 yards. I'll tell the headman in the morning. But you mark it, Sterling. You paint a big bloody red cross on it, so my mahouts don't make a mistake. If they knock it down by accident, that's on you." Arthur felt the tension drain from his shoulders, leaving him weak. "Thank you. I will mark it at dawn." "Now sit down and have a drink," Ferguson commanded. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have seen a king," Arthur replied softly, sitting down. The weeks that followed were a time of noise and trembling. True to his word, Ferguson spared Tree 402, but the forest around it was transformed. The sound of axes biting into wood rang out from dawn until dusk. The crash of falling giants shook the ground, sending tremors up the trunk of the sanctuary tree. Wu Huang and Arthur took turns guarding the site. They painted a ring of red paint around the perimeter. Inside the hollow, the female hornbill sat in the dark. She could feel the vibrations. She could hear the terrifying trumpeting of the elephants as they dragged the logs through the undergrowth. Dust choked the air, filtering in through the feeding slit. But the male never failed her. Every day, amidst the chaos of the logging operation, the Naung returned. He flew through the gaps in the canopy where his ancestral perches used to be. He navigated the falling timber. He arrived at the nest, his feathers dusted with sawdust, his eyes wide with alertness. He brought figs. He brought geckos. He knocked on the wood, talk talk, a signal that said, "I am here. I have not abandoned you." One afternoon, a crisis occurred. A young timber elephant, spooked by a falling branch, broke its chains. It panicked, charging through the underbrush directly toward the sanctuary tree. Wu Huang was on watch. He stood up shouting, waving his arms. "Hey, hey!" The elephant, a massive tusker, was blind with fear. It trampled the red tape Arthur had strung up. It was 20 yards from the tree. From the canopy above, a black shape dived. The male hornbill, usually shy of large beasts, swooped down. He screamed, a raucous, guttural roar. "Gok gok, kagok." The sound was incredibly loud, amplified by the casque. The bird pulled out of the dive just feet above the elephant's head, the wind from his massive wings startling the beast. The elephant skidded, turned, and veered off to the left, missing the sanctuary tree by mere feet. Wu Huang fell to his knees, his heart hammering. High above, the male hornbill landed on the branch, panting, his beak open. He looked down at the man, and for a moment, the species barrier seemed to dissolve. 3 months passed. The rains ceased. The cool season arrived, bringing with it the morning mists that turned the valleys into rivers of white cotton. The logging camp had moved on to the next sector. The silence returned, though the forest was thinner, scarred by the extraction. But Tree 402 still stood, a lonely sentinel in a clearing of stumps. Arthur sat with his notebook. He was thinner now, his skin tanned, his beard unkempt. He had recorded every feeding, every vocalization. "Listen," Wu Huang whispered. From inside the tree, a new sound emerged. Not the soft clucking of the female, but a high-pitched, demanding rasp. "They have hatched," Arthur whispered, a grin spreading across his face. "By Jove, they have hatched." The male's workload doubled. He was gaunt now, his plumage less glossy. He spent his entire day foraging, flying further and further afield as the local fruit trees had been cut down. He was exhausting himself to feed the mouths behind the wall. Then, 2 weeks later, the moment arrived. It began with a chipping sound. The female was breaking the wall. Arthur held his breath. Wu Huang leaned forward. Chunks of dried mud fell to the forest floor. The slit widened. A beak appeared, chipping away the masonry of dung and earth. After an hour of labor, the hole was large enough. The female great hornbill emerged. She was pale, her white feathers stained brown from the confinement, her movements stiff. She stood on the rim of the hollow, blinking in the bright sunlight she had not seen for a quarter of a year. She stretched her wings. They were fully feathered. She had molted and regrown them in the darkness. She looked up. The male was there, waiting. He gave a soft croak. Then a smaller head appeared in the hole. A chick, looking like a prehistoric gargoyle, with a tiny casque and oversized eyes. The female did not fly away immediately. She hopped to the branch beside the male. They touched beaks, a gesture of intimacy that made Arthur look away, feeling like an intruder on a private reunion. "They survived," Arthur said, his voice thick with emotion. "The forest survived," Lang corrected. "As long as the ngong flies, the forest lives." The male offered the female a fruit he had been holding. She took it. Then together, they turned their attention to the chick. The cycle would continue. The female would help feed the chick now, and eventually, the chick would leave the hollow to join the canopy. Arthur closed his notebook. He had come to measure a bird. He had found a story of resilience that defied the industrial age. "Come, Thakin," Lang said, and standing up. "Our watch is ended. Let us leave them in peace." They walked away from the great dipterocarp, leaving the family of kings in their high tower. The sound of wings followed them. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The heartbeat of the Bago Yoma, enduring against the odds.